The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, though nobody on Earth would remember that detail later. What they would remember was the moment everything changed. The signal came from deep space, far beyond anything humans had ever reached. It was clear, precise, and translated itself into every language on Earth simultaneously. Ambassador Tae-wan stood in the communications center, watching the holographic display with steady eyes. He was 52 years old, with gray streaking through his black hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of difficult decisions. Before becoming Earth's lead diplomat, he had been a military strategist. That training served him well now as he read the message for the third time. The Galactic Council welcomed humanity to the stars. They called humans children taking their first steps and offered guidance. They promised protection, technology, and a place among the civilized species of the galaxy. 847 different species had signed this message. 847 civilizations wanted to meet humanity. Captain Hana entered the room, her uniform crisp despite the early hour. At 38, she commanded Earth's first deep space vessel, the Wanderer. She had been in orbit when the message arrived. "They want us to come to them," she said, reading over his shoulder. "Station Nexus 7, 3 months' travel at our current speeds." Tae-wan nodded slowly. "They're being very welcoming. You don't sound happy about it." "I'm cautious about it." He pulled up another screen, showing the terms and conditions attached to the invitation. The document was enormous. There's a lot of fine print. Dr. Yuna joined them carrying a tablet and coffee. She was 45, Earth's best xenobiologist, though until now she had only studied theoretical alien life. Her specialty was cultural patterns and evolutionary psychology. "I've been reading through their requirements for membership," she said. "Some of it seems reasonable. Some of it seems controlling." "Show me the concerning parts," Tae-wan said. Yuna projected several sections onto the main screen. "They want complete records of our military capabilities. They want access to our technology databases. They want Earth to accept what they call guidance species, who will help us integrate properly." She paused. "They also want us to limit our population growth and accept resource quotas." Hana frowned. "We just achieved faster than light travel. We just got out here, and they already want to put limits on us? They say it's for our protection," Yuna explained. "They say new species often expand too quickly and destabilize regions. They say their system has kept peace for thousands of years." Tae-wan studied the terms carefully. His strategic mind saw patterns. Each requirement seemed small by itself. Together they formed something else entirely. These terms would give them control over nearly every aspect of human civilization. "Maybe that's how things work out here," Hana suggested, though her tone was doubtful. "Maybe we're thinking like isolated Earth people instead of galactic citizens." "Maybe," Tae-wan agreed. "Or maybe we should learn more before we agree to anything." He made his decision. "We accept the invitation to visit. We do not accept the terms yet. We go to listen and learn." The Earth government approved the diplomatic mission within days. Tae-wan assembled his team carefully. Hana would pilot the diplomatic vessel. Yuna would analyze alien cultures and advise on interactions. He also brought Dae, a 26-year-old programmer whose skills with computers bordered on supernatural, and Minji, a 41-year-old expert in power structures and political systems. They departed on a cold morning, Earth shrinking behind them as they accelerated toward the stars. Admiral June, commander of Earth's defensive fleet, accompanied them partway. His ships would wait in a nearby system, hidden and ready, just in case. During the 3-month journey, Yuna spent her time studying everything the Council had sent. She analyzed their language patterns, their cultural references, their history. The more she learned, the more troubled she became. "Look at this," she told Tae-wan one evening in the ship's briefing room. She displayed a timeline of Council expansion. Every 50 years or so, a new species joins, and every single one follows the same pattern. What pattern? They join with great fanfare. For the first generation, everything seems wonderful. Technology improves, diseases are cured, resources are shared. But by the second generation, something changes. The new species stops producing innovations. They stop exploring. They become quiet. Tae-wan leaned forward. "All of them?" "All of them. I found references to species that were known for being warriors, explorers, artists, inventors. Now they just maintain infrastructure and follow Council directives." Yuna pulled up more data. It's like they lose whatever made them special. Could be coincidence, Hana said, but she didn't sound convinced. Could be, Yuna agreed. But I want to investigate more when we arrive. Something about this doesn't feel right. Station Nexus 7 appeared on their scanners 2 weeks before they arrived. Even from a distance, it was breathtaking. The structure was bigger than Earth's moon, a massive ring of metal and energy that glowed against the darkness of space. Thousands of ships came and went like insects around a hive. As they drew closer, Day worked quietly at his console. He had been analyzing the Council's communication networks, learning their protocols and security systems. He said little, but his fingers moved constantly across holographic keyboards. They docked at a port designed for newcomers. The moment the airlock opened, Taewon smelled something strange and wonderful. Alien scents, alien air, alien life. The port was enormous, with ceilings that vanished into artificial sky. Beings of every description moved through the space. Some walked on 2 legs, some on 4 or 6 or more, some flew. Some seemed to float without any visible means of support. A delegation waited for them. The leader was a reptilian being who introduced himself as Counselor Vreth. His scales were deep green, his eyes ancient and knowing. "Welcome, humans. Welcome to civilization." His voice was warm, friendly, grandfatherly. Behind him stood dozens of other representatives. Each one different, each one strange, each one watching the humans with interest. "We are honored," Taewon said carefully. "Thank you for inviting us." "Come," Vreth said. "We have prepared a ceremony. All the council wishes to meet you. You are the newest children of the galaxy, and we will guide you well." As they followed Vreth through the massive station, Hana moved close to Taewon. "Did you hear how he said that?" she whispered. "Children," Taewon confirmed quietly. "He called us children." Yuna walked on his other side, her eyes studying everything. The aliens they passed seemed happy enough, but there was something in their expression she couldn't quite identify. Contentment, perhaps, or resignation. The ceremony hall held thousands. Representatives from all 847 species filled the space. They cheered as the humans entered. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, Taewon felt like he was walking into a trap that hadn't closed yet. On a raised platform at the center of the hall stood a being of pure energy, barely contained in a humanoid shape. This was High Arbiter Quinn, the leader of the council. When he spoke, his voice resonated in every mind simultaneously. "Humanity, you stand at the threshold of your destiny. Behind you lies isolation, struggle, and the mistakes of youth. Before you lies enlightenment, prosperity, and eternal peace. Join us, accept our guidance. Take your place among the civilized species of the galaxy." The crowd cheered again. The sound was deafening. Taewon looked at his team. Hana's hand rested near her sidearm. Yuna's eyes were wide with analysis. Day watched everything with the focused intensity of someone recording every detail. Minji studied the crowd, reading the political currents. "We are honored by your welcome," Taewon said, his voice amplified to reach everyone. "We have come to learn. We have come to understand. We have come to see what you offer." "And you will see," Quinn promised. "In 7 days you will understand everything. In 7 days you will choose your future." The ceremony continued for hours. By the end, Taewon felt exhausted. They were given luxurious quarters, offered food and entertainment, treated like honored guests. That night, alone in his room, Taewon looked out at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there, Admiral June waited with Earth's fleet. Somewhere back there, humanity held its breath. He thought about Vreth calling them children. He thought about Yuna's research on species that lost their spark. He thought about terms that seemed reasonable individually but controlling together. 7 days to understand everything. 7 days to choose. He suspected it wouldn't be enough time. He also suspected it would be more than enough to see the truth. The negotiation chambers were designed to impress and intimidate. Taewon recognized this immediately. The ceiling stretched up so high it created an artificial sky. The table was enormous, built for beings much larger than humans. The chairs for the human delegation were smaller, lower, forcing them to look up at the council representatives. Counselor Vreth sat at the head of the table, surrounded by advisors from a dozen different species. His smile never wavered as he activated the holographic displays. "Let us begin with the simplest matters," he said. "Security." The first set of terms appeared in the air. Yuna translated the complex legal language quietly for the others. They want a complete inventory of all human military assets. Ships, weapons, defensive systems, everything. For your protection, Vreth explained. We must know what you have so we can help you integrate it with Council defensive networks. And if we don't integrate? Taewon asked. Vreth's smile remained fixed. Why would you not want protection? The galaxy has dangers you cannot imagine. Alone you are vulnerable. Minji, the political expert, made notes on her tablet. She had seen this tactic before in Earth's history. Offer protection that becomes control. The terms continued. All human ships would be retrofitted with Council transponders. Human weapons technology would be shared with the Council archive. Earth's defensive satellites would operate under Council protocols. It went on for hours. This seems very one-sided, Hana said during a break. They had retreated to their private quarters. We give them everything. What do we get? Safety, Taewon said dryly. Peace. The wisdom of 847 civilizations. Day looked up from his computer. The young programmer had been silent most of the day, but his fingers never stopped moving. I've been mapping their network topology. Want to know something interesting? Always, Taewon said. The security is really good on the outside. But once you're inside, it's like they never expected anyone to look around. Day pulled up his screen. I've accessed their historical archives. The membership records for every species that ever joined. Yuna moved closer. Show me the Karathi. Vreth mentioned them yesterday. Said they were model members. Day pulled up the records. The Karathi had joined 800 years ago. The first century of records showed a vibrant civilization. They had contributed new technologies, explored 30 systems, produced art and literature that enriched the Council. Then, slowly, the records changed. Fewer innovations, less exploration. The Karathi had become administrators, miners, technicians. They maintained infrastructure but created nothing new. Pull up another species, Yuna said. The Venthari. They joined 300 years ago. The same pattern. Initial vibrancy, then slow decline into quiet compliance. Try one more, Minji suggested. The Quelon. They joined just 60 years ago. Again, the same pattern. It was already beginning with them. Taewon studied the data carefully. This is what you were worried about. Every species loses something after they join, Yuna said. It's consistent. It's deliberate, but why? Hana asked. Why would the Council want weak members? Because strong members might challenge them, Minji answered. This isn't a council of equals. It's a hierarchy disguised as democracy. The next day they reviewed economic terms. The display showed Earth's resources: minerals, water, biological diversity, industrial capacity. Vreth's representative explained how everything would be allocated according to Council formulas. You will receive everything you need, the representative assured them. Food, medicine, technology. All distributed fairly according to your population and developmental level. Who decides what we need? Taewon asked. The Council has studied resource management for millennia. Trust in our wisdom. The terms went deeper. Earth would stop producing certain technologies that the Council deemed unnecessary or dangerous. Human factories would retool to produce items for the greater galactic good. Earth's trade would flow through Council markets, regulated and taxed for the benefit of all. Minji passed a note to Taewon during the presentation. They're planning our economy like we're a province, not a partner. That evening, Day's work became more dangerous. He had found a back door in the Council systems, a maintenance access that hadn't been properly secured. He dove deeper into the archives, looking for anything that might explain the pattern they had discovered. What he found was worse than they had imagined. Look at this, he told the team in their secured quarters. He projected files onto their private screen. These are internal Council communications about the Karathi from 700 years ago. The documents were clear. The Council had identified the Karathi as potential rivals. They were innovative, aggressive, expanding quickly. The Council had considered them a threat. So they had designed the membership terms specifically to control them. They did it on purpose, Yuna whispered. They deliberately suppressed them. More files appeared. Species after species. Each one evaluated for potential threat level. Each one given membership terms designed to control their growth and limit their influence. They're not bringing species into civilization, Hana said. They're neutering them. The third day brought cultural terms. These were presented by a being who called itself an educator. It explained how human schools would adopt Council-approved curriculum. How human children would learn galactic history from the Council's perspective. How Earth's diverse cultures would be preserved in museums while everyone adopted standard galactic customs. Your individuality will be respected, the educator promised, but unity requires common ground. You will learn to think as galactic citizens, not as isolated humans. Yuna felt sick. This was cultural genocide dressed in friendly language. They would erase what made humans human, replace it with something standardized and safe. That night, a visitor came to their quarters. He arrived when security patrols changed shifts, when sensors were being reset. He was Karathi, his scales gray with age, his eyes tired. "I am Thex," he said quietly. "I should not be here, but I must speak with you." Taiwan let him in. The security in their quarters had been subtly defeated by Day's skills. They could talk freely. "I have served the council for 800 years, Thex said. "I am old even for my people. And I remember what we were before we joined." He told them about the Karathi homeworld, about ships that sailed between stars with joy, not just purpose, about warriors who fought for honor, artists who created for passion, scientists who discovered for curiosity, about a civilization that burned bright with life and energy. "Now we are shadows," Thex said. "We work, we obey. We exist, but we do not live. Not like we did." He looked at each of them. The council fears competition. They fear change. They have built a perfect system that will never grow, never evolve, never challenge them. "Why tell us this?" Taiwan asked. "Because you still have a choice," Thex said. "We did not understand what we were agreeing to. We saw only the benefits, not the cost. But you are asking questions. You are looking deeper. You might see what we missed." "They'll never let us refuse," Hana said. "They've made that clear." "Then you must be prepared for what comes next," Thex said. He stood to leave. "I cannot help you directly. But know this, there are others like me in every species. We remember what we lost. If you stand against the council, you will not be entirely alone." He left as quietly as he had come. The fourth day brought the most disturbing terms. Population control. A council demographer explained how Earth's growth rate was unsustainable, how humans bred too quickly for galactic standards, how limits must be established for the good of everyone. "You will still have children," the demographer said, "but responsibly. With permission. According to what your world can support under council resource allocation." Taiwan kept his face neutral, but inside he raged. They wanted to control who could be born. They wanted permits for human reproduction. The fifth day was genetic regulation. A council scientist explained how human DNA would be monitored for dangerous mutations, how genetic diversity would be managed, how humanity's evolution would be guided by superior galactic knowledge. By the sixth day, Taiwan had read every word of every term. Thousands of pages of legal text. He understood completely now. If humanity accepted these terms, they would cease to be an independent species. They would become property of the council, managed and controlled and ultimately domesticated. That evening, he contacted Earth through their secured quantum link. President Kyunga appeared on the screen. She was 49, elected because she promised to represent humanity's interests among the stars without surrendering their identity. "Tell me," she said simply. Taiwan explained everything. The terms, the patterns, the truth about what happened to species that joined. He showed her Day's findings and Thex's warning. Kyunga listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "What do you recommend?" she asked. "We refuse," Taiwan said. "All of it. We thank them politely and we refuse. They'll threaten us. Yes, they might attack us. Possibly. We'll be alone out here." "Yes." Kyunga smiled slightly. "Good. I didn't leave Earth to kneel before a new empire. Prepare your response. Make it clear. Make it strong. Show them that humans do not surrender their freedom, no matter what the cost." The silence in the hall stretched like a physical thing. Thousands of alien eyes watched Taiwan, waiting for the expected answer. In 847 previous encounters, new species had always accepted. Some quickly, some after negotiation, but all of them eventually bowed to the inevitable. Taiwan activated his communicator. President Kyunga's hologram appeared beside him, life-sized and clear. She wore the formal robes of Earth's unified government, and her expression was calm and resolute. "High Arbiter Quinn, Counselor Vreth, representatives of the Galactic Council," she began. Her voice was transmitted throughout the station, translated into every language simultaneously. "I am President Kyunga of Earth. I speak for all humanity. We have reviewed your terms carefully. We have considered your offer of membership with the seriousness it deserves. The crowd shifted. This was unusual. New species typically had their ambassadors speak, not their leaders. The personal appearance of Earth's president suggested something significant. We thank you for your welcome, Kyung-ah continued. We acknowledge the wisdom you have gathered over millennia. We recognize the peace you have maintained and the prosperity you have built. She paused, letting her words settle. And we reject your terms. All of them. Completely and without reservation. The silence shattered. The hall erupted in confused murmuring. Counselor Vreth's reptilian face showed genuine shock. Even High Arbiter Quinn's energy form flickered with what might have been surprise. Humanity chooses sovereignty over security, Kyung-ah said, her voice cutting through the noise. We choose freedom over protection. We choose to walk our own path among the stars, even if that path is difficult, even if that path is dangerous, even if that path is alone. Quinn's voice resonated through every mind, overwhelming in its power. You do not understand what you refuse. You are children. You need guidance. We understand perfectly, Kyung-ah replied. We understand that your terms would strip away everything that makes us human. We understand that every species that joins you becomes something less than they were. We understand that you offer civilization at the price of identity. The murmuring grew louder. Some species representatives looked confused. Others looked angry. A few, Taewon noticed, looked thoughtful. Vreth stood, his ancient eyes hard. You are making a terrible mistake. Alone you will fail. The galaxy is not kind to isolated species. You have no idea what dangers exist out here. Then we will learn, Taewon said, speaking for the first time. We will make mistakes. We will struggle. We might fail. But we will do it as ourselves, not as your domesticated pets. The word pets landed like a bomb. Counselors began shouting. Some in anger, some in protest. The careful diplomatic veneer cracked. Day's fingers moved across his hidden interface. Files began uploading to every terminal in the station. He had prepared this carefully over the past 7 days, building backdoors and access points throughout the Council's supposedly secure network. Before we leave, Taewon said, his voice amplified, we want to share something with all species present. Information we discovered in the Council's own archives. On every screen throughout the station, data began appearing. Historical records of the Karathi before and after joining. Internal Council communications discussing how to control them. Similar records for dozens of other species. Analysis of how membership terms were designed specifically to suppress potential rivals. What is this? A Karathi representative stood, staring at the screens. His name was Ralden, and he was young for his species. This says the Council deliberately weakened us. These records are classified. Vreth shouted. This is a violation of Council security. The truth is never a violation, Yuna said clearly. She had spent the past week analyzing the data with Day. Every species in this hall should know what happened to those who came before. Every species should understand what membership truly means. More representatives stood, reading the files that appeared on their tablets and screens. Voices rose in confusion and anger. The careful order of the council chamber dissolved into chaos. Thek stood among the Karathi delegation. He was old enough to remember the truth, and seeing it displayed for everyone brought tears to his ancient eyes. We were warriors once, he said, his voice carrying despite the chaos. We were explorers. We were free. And they took it from us 1 generation at a time, until we forgot what we had been. A Venthari representative clutched her tablet, reading about her own species' decline. A Quellan male stared at projections showing how his people's innovation had dropped to nothing, after just 60 years of membership. High Arbiter Quinn's energy form burned brighter with rage. Enough! This is sedition! This is chaos. Guards arrest the human delegation immediately. Security forces began moving through the crowd, converging on the humans. They were well-armed and numerous. The situation was about to turn violent. Hana's hand moved to her weapon. Ambassador, we need to leave now. Taewon activated his communicator again. Admiral June, we're ready for extraction. Confirmed, came the response from the hidden fleet. Decloaking in 3, 2, 1. Outside the station, space itself seemed to tear as 30 human warships dropped their stealth fields. They surrounded the station at precise intervals, weapons powered but not targeted. It was not an attack formation. It was an extraction formation. Alarms blared throughout Nexus 7. The sudden appearance of a military fleet inside their defensive perimeter was unprecedented. It should have been impossible. Human stealth technology had proven more advanced than the Council expected. "You brought warships," Vreth hissed. "You came here with weapons." "We came here prepared," Taiwan corrected. "We hoped for friendship, but we planned for betrayal. It seems our caution was justified." More counselors were shouting now. Some demanded the humans be arrested. Others demanded the fleet be destroyed. A few were still reading the files D had released, their expressions troubled. "We're leaving now," Kyung-ah said, her hologram still present and calm despite the chaos. "We will not interfere with your council. We will not attack your ships. We simply want to go home and be left alone." "That is not acceptable," Quinn said. His energy form pulsed with power. "You have violated our security. You have stolen classified information. You have caused chaos among our members. There must be consequences." "The only consequence will be our departure," Taiwan said. He signaled his team. They began moving toward the exit, surrounded by security forces who didn't know whether to arrest them or not. The sudden appearance of human warships had created uncertainty. "If you leave like this, you will be declaring yourselves enemies of the Council," Vreth warned. "We will blockade your system. We will isolate you. No species will trade with you. You will be alone in a hostile galaxy. Better alone and free than together and enslaved," Hana said. They reached the corridor leading to their ship. Security forces blocked the way, weapons raised. The situation balanced on a knife edge. One wrong move and violence would erupt. Then Thek stepped forward from the Karathi delegation. The old warrior placed himself between the security forces and the humans. "Let them go," he said quietly. "Stand aside, Thex," Vreth commanded. "You have no authority here." "I have the authority of truth," Thex replied. "Everything they showed us is real. I lived it. I watched my people change from free beings into servants. I will not help you do the same to another species." Other representatives began moving. A Venthari female joined Thex, then a Quelon male, then others from a dozen different species. They didn't block the security forces, but they made their position clear. "If you want to arrest them, you'll have to go through us," Raul then said, standing with Thex. More young Karathi joined him. The security commander looked uncertain. Arresting humans was one thing. Fighting representatives from member species was something else entirely. "Let them go," a new voice said. It belonged to Elder Vix, representative of a species so old they rarely spoke in council sessions. "They have shown us uncomfortable truths. Attacking them will only prove their point." Vreth looked ready to object, but Quinn raised a hand. The High Arbiter was calculating quickly. The situation had spiraled beyond control. "Fighting now would only make things worse. Go," Quinn said coldly. "Run back to your isolated little world. When you face the dangers of the galaxy alone, when your people suffer because you chose pride over wisdom, remember that we offered you salvation." "We'll remember that we chose freedom," Taiwan said, "and we'll remember those who stood with us today." He looked at Thex, at Raul then, at the others who had created a path for them. "Thank you." They moved quickly to their ship. Behind them, the council hall descended into argument. Representatives were demanding explanations. Others were calling for reforms. Some were questioning everything they had believed about the council. The human ship detached from the station smoothly. The 30 warships maintained their positions, ensuring safe passage. Admiral June's voice came through clearly. "Welcome back, Ambassador. We're ready to escort you home." "What's the situation on Earth?" Taiwan asked as Hana piloted them away from the station. "Celebrating," June replied with satisfaction. "The broadcast went out on every channel. People watched you tell the council no. They watched the president stand up for humanity. It's chaos in the best possible way." 3 months had passed since humanity's rejection of the council's terms. 3 months since Taiwan and his team had escaped Nexus 7 with truth as their weapon and courage as their shield. 3 months since the galaxy began to crack, President Kyung-ah stood in Earth's command center, watching holographic displays that tracked the growing crisis. Each display showed a different region of council space. Each one showed chaos spreading like fire through dry grass. "How many now?" she asked Director Bora, head of Earth's intelligence network. Bora was 48, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, a woman who had spent her life reading patterns in information. 127 species are openly questioning their membership, Bora reported. 17 have formally withdrawn from the Council. Another 50 are in active negotiations to reduce Council authority in their territories. And the Council's response? Aggressive. Bora pulled up tactical maps. They've established blockades around the 17 worlds that withdrew. No ships in or out. They're calling it protective quarantine, but it's clearly punishment. Admiral June entered the room, still wearing his combat uniform. He had been drilling Earth's defense forces constantly since their return. The Council fleet is mobilizing, he said without preamble. They're calling up reserves from member species, building up forces along our border. Are we ready? Kyung-ah asked, as ready as we can be. June pulled up Earth's defensive positions. We've fortified the Sol system. We've got early warning stations in neighboring systems. We've shared our stealth technology with our new allies. He paused. But if the full Council fleet comes at us, we'll be outnumbered 100 to 1. Then we need to make sure they're too busy with internal problems to focus on us, Kyung-ah said. She turned to another screen. What's the status of the coalition? The Coalition of Free Worlds had formed 2 months ago. It started with the 17 species that withdrew from the Council. Humanity had been the first to offer them support. Trade agreements, technology sharing, mutual defense pacts, not as overlords offering protection, but as equals offering partnership. The difference was everything. Growing, Bora said with satisfaction. We now have 43 member species. Most are small civilizations, newly independent. But they're motivated. They remember what they almost lost. One of those species was the Karathi. Ral then had led his people in a revolution that toppled their council-appointed government within weeks of humanity's departure. It had been bloodless, a simple overwhelming of the old order by citizens who remembered they were once warriors. Now Ral then served as the coalition's military coordinator, working closely with June. The young Karathi had proven to be brilliant at strategy and passionate about freedom. Show me the Karathi sectors, Kyung-ah said. The display shifted to show Karathi space. Their worlds were industrializing rapidly, throwing off centuries of stagnation. Old shipyards that had built only transport vessels were now constructing warships. Not to attack, Ral then insisted, but to defend their newfound freedom. They're not the only ones waking up, Bora said. She showed other regions. The Vanthari had begun exploring again, sending ships to systems they had abandoned long ago. The Kellen were producing new technologies for the first time in decades. Species throughout Council space were remembering what they had been before membership had dulled them. The Council is calling it a plague, Bora continued. The plague of human thinking, they say. The disease of independence. Kyung-ah smiled coldly. Good. Let it spread. But the Council was not sitting idle. On Nexus 7, Councillor Vreth and High Arbiter Quinn met with their hardline supporters. These were the species that benefited most from the current system. The ones who had joined early and risen to positions of power by serving the Council faithfully. We must act decisively, Vreth said. His reptilian features were harsh with anger. Every day we wait, more species question us. The humans have poisoned the galaxy with their notion of independence. We should destroy Earth as an example, one counselor suggested. Show everyone what happens to those who defy us. That would only prove the humans right, another argued. It would show we rule through fear, not wisdom. Quinn's energy form flickered as he considered options. We will isolate them. Total blockade. No trade, no communication, no contact with any Council species. We will make Earth a prison. Within a generation, they will beg to rejoin us on any terms. What about species that trade with Earth? Vreth asked. They will choose, Quinn said coldly. Us or them. There is no middle ground anymore. The blockade began a week later. Council fleets established checkpoints throughout space surrounding human territory. Any ship attempting to reach Earth was turned back. Any species that protested found themselves under increased Council scrutiny. It should have worked. Humanity was still young to space travel, still dependent on resources from beyond their system. Cut off completely, they should have struggled and eventually capitulated. But the Council had underestimated human ingenuity and the power of motivated allies. Subin was 36, a human diplomat who had spent the past 3 months building relationships with species throughout the coalition. She was clever, patient, and absolutely committed to keeping the supply lines open. We can't use the main routes, she said during a conference with coalition members. The Council controls those. But space is big. There are thousands of routes they can't possibly patrol. Sneaking around like criminals, one representative said doubtfully. Sneaking around like free people who refuse to ask permission to exist, Subin corrected. We establish hidden waypoints. We share our stealth technology. We create a network the Council can't see. It worked. Ships began moving through unpatrolled space carrying resources and trade goods. The blockade became porous, more symbol than substance, and each successful run proved that the Council's control was not absolute. But the Council had other weapons. Economic pressure mounted as they offered incentives to species that maintained loyalty. Military pressure increased as they reinforced blockades around rebel worlds. Political pressure intensified as they demanded species choose sides. The crisis came to a head over the Karathi homeworld. The Council fleet arrived without warning. 50 ships heavily armed taking positions around the planet. The message was clear: submit or be destroyed. Ral then stood in his command center watching the enemy fleet position itself. He was young for this responsibility, barely 30 years old in Karathi terms, but he had the fire that his people had lost over 8 centuries of Council membership. They're demanding we surrender, his communications officer said. They say we have 12 hours to restore Council authority or they will intervene militarily. Intervene, Ral then said bitterly. That's a gentle word for invasion. His tactical officer, an older Karathi named Vex, studied the displays. We can't win a direct fight. They have too many ships. Then we don't fight directly. Ral then opened a channel to coalition allies. This is Karathi command to all coalition forces. We need help, now. The response was immediate. Ships began moving from across coalition space. Human vessels, Venthari cruisers, Quelon scouts, and dozens of others. They converged on Karathi space using the hidden routes Subin had established. Admiral June commanded the Earth fleet personally. 30 warships, including the newest vessels built in Earth's orbital shipyards. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in formation with coalition allies. The combined fleet was still outnumbered, but not by as much. And the Council commander had not expected reinforcements. This is Admiral June of Earth to Council fleet, he broadcast. You are in sovereign Karathi space without permission. Withdraw, or we will exercise our right to collective defense. The Council commander responded with threats and demands, but his voice carried uncertainty. The Council had not fought a real battle in centuries. Their ships were powerful, but their crews were unpracticed. Sir, they're moving to attack positions, June's tactical officer reported. All ships defensive formation, June ordered. Do not fire unless fired upon. Make them throw the first punch. The two fleets faced each other across the dark of space. Hours passed in tense standoff. The Council commander contacted Nexus 7 for instructions. Freth and Quinn had to decide. Escalate to actual war or back down and show weakness. They blinked. Council fleet is withdrawing, the tactical officer reported with surprise. They're leaving the system. A cheer went up across the coalition command channels. They had won without firing a shot. The Council, faced with actual resistance, had retreated, but the victory was only partial. The Council's propaganda machine worked overtime. They claimed they had shown mercy. They insisted the blockades would continue. They warned that next time there would be no restraint. More species withdrew from the Council in the following weeks. The trickle became a flood. The Council's 847 members dropped to 720, then 650, then 590. Species that stayed in the Council split into factions. Hardliners demanded the rebels be crushed. Reformists argued for negotiation and changes to membership terms. Moderates tried to hold the center together, but the center was collapsing. On Earth, Commander Hyun led special operations to evacuate populations from worlds where the Council maintained control. 1 year. That was how long it took for the Galactic Council to fall. Not with explosions or battles, though there had been some of those. Not with dramatic confrontations, though those had happened too. The Council fell the way all empires built on lies eventually fall, slowly at first, then all at once, when enough people stopped believing. Tae-Wan stood at the viewport of the diplomatic station, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. He was 53 now, grayer than before, with new lines around his eyes. But those lines came from smiling more than frowning. He had retired from active diplomacy 6 months ago, passing his responsibilities to younger hands. He had earned his rest, but he had come for this. Everyone who had been part of the first contact mission had come for this. This was too important to miss. The Galactic Summit was being held on a neutral world, a beautiful planet with blue oceans and green continents that reminded humans of Earth. The system had no allegiance to the old council or the new coalition. It was perfect for what they hoped to build. Hana joined him at the viewport. She wore an admiral's uniform now, having been promoted after the standoff at Karathi Space. "Big day," she said simply. "Biggest in galactic history," Taewan agreed. "We're not just ending one system. We're trying to build something better. Think it'll work? Ask me in 100 years." Representatives from 412 species were gathering, not to form a new council that would control them, but to establish basic principles for how free species could interact. No forced membership, no mandatory terms, no surrender of sovereignty, just agreements between equals about trade, communication, and mutual defense against real threats. The kind of system that respected differences while enabling cooperation. Yuna was already in the conference center, helping coordinate the xenobiological aspects of the summit. With so many species in one place, environmental needs varied wildly. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some needed high gravity, others low. Some experienced time differently, perceived colors humans couldn't see, communicated in ways that required specialized translation. Making it all work was a massive challenge, but it was a challenge everyone had agreed to face together. Dr. Yuna had spent the past year documenting what she called the Great Remembering. Species throughout the galaxy were rediscovering their histories, their cultures, their identities that had been suppressed under council rule. She had helped dozens of civilizations recover lost traditions, forgotten languages, abandoned arts. "It's like watching the galaxy come back to life," she had told Taewan. They were all there, all these amazing civilizations just sleeping. Now they're waking up. Day had become something of a legend. The young programmer who had cracked the council's security and exposed their lies was now chief architect of the new galactic communication network. He was building a system that couldn't be controlled by any single authority, that protected privacy while enabling connection, that belonged to everyone and no one. No more centralized control, he had insisted during the design phase. No more single point of failure. The network should be like the species using it, independent but connected. He was 27 now, still young, but his work had changed the galaxy. The summit began with a moment of silence for those who had been lost. The council's collapse had not been entirely peaceful. There had been fighting in some regions as hardliners tried to maintain control. There had been accidents as old systems failed. There had been suffering during the transition, but there had also been liberation. Billions of beings who had lived their entire lives under council control were now free to choose their own paths. President Kyung-ah addressed the assembly. She stood at a simple podium. No elevated platform, no intimidating architecture. Just one leader among many. 1 year ago, humanity rejected the Galactic Council's terms, she began. We did not know what would happen. We did not know if we would survive. We only knew that freedom was worth the risk. She looked out at the assembled representatives. We did not start a revolution. We only chose to be ourselves. But that choice inspired others to make the same choice. And here we are, hundreds of species building something new together. The proposal she presented was called the Declaration of Sovereign Species Rights. It had been drafted by representatives from 30 different civilizations, including Ambassador Junho, who had taken over Taiwan's role. Junho was 33, younger than Taiwan had been during first contact, but wise beyond his years. He had learned diplomacy in the hardest school, negotiating between species that had been enemies under council rule, finding common ground between civilizations with nothing in common except their desire for freedom. The declaration was simple. Every species had the right to self-determination. No species could claim authority over another. Technology and culture could be shared but never demanded. Trade should be voluntary and fair. Military force could only be used in genuine self-defense. Simple principles but revolutionary after millennia of council control. The debate lasted for days. Some species wanted stronger central authority for coordination. Others wanted no authority at all. Some feared that without the council's rigid structure, there would be chaos. Others insisted that chaos was better than tyranny. Minji, the political expert who had been part of the original mission, helped mediate the difficult discussions. She understood power structures better than almost anyone, and she used that knowledge to build consensus. The council failed because it tried to control everything, she explained to a group of worried representatives. They thought order required domination. But order can come from agreement. From species choosing to cooperate because it benefits them, not because they're forced to. Slowly, painfully, the declaration took shape. Not perfect but good, not permanent but adaptable, not controlling but enabling. On the fourth day, the vote came. 412 species had to decide whether to accept these principles or continue negotiating. The tension was enormous. If the vote failed, the summit would collapse. The galaxy might fragment into isolated regions, suspicious and hostile. The vote passed. Not unanimously, but by a strong majority. 390 species agreed to the declaration. 22 wanted more time to consider. None voted against it. The hall erupted in celebration. Beings who had never met before embraced. Species that had been suppressed together rejoiced together. It was messy and emotional and beautiful. Taewon watched from the observation gallery and felt tears on his face. He had stood before the council a year ago and said no. He had not known what would come next. He had only known that humanity needed to be free, and now the galaxy was free with them. But freedom brought challenges. The council's infrastructure had collapsed, leaving gaps in trade routes, communication networks, and defense coordination. Species that had relied on council systems suddenly had to build their own. The Karathi took the lead in many areas. Ralthen, now recognized as a leader among the coalition species, had matured into his role. He was still young and passionate, but tempered with experience. "We lost 800 years," he said during one summit session. 800 years of progress, exploration, growth. We can never get that time back. But we can make sure no species ever loses their future like we lost ours. He proposed the Institute for Cultural Preservation, which Yuna now directed. Its mission was to help species recover and protect their identities. Libraries of lost knowledge, archives of forgotten traditions, museums of suppressed art. Never again, Ral then said, and it became the unofficial motto of the new order. Never again would species be forced to surrender who they were. Never again would diversity be treated as a problem to be managed. Never again would freedom be traded for false security. Admiral June commanded the Coalition Defense Fleet, a voluntary organization that protected member species from genuine threats. Not an army of conquest, but a network of mutual aid. When pirates attacked Venthari traders, coalition ships responded. When a natural disaster struck a Quellan colony, coalition resources helped rebuild. "We're not trying to rule the galaxy," June explained to new members. "We're just trying to make sure everyone can rule themselves without interference." Captain Yunji, who had become a war hero during the border conflicts, now commanded joint coalition patrols. She was 29, brilliant at tactics and absolutely committed to the new system. "My parents lived under council rule," she told her crew. "They never knew they could choose a different life. I grew up free because people had the courage to say no. I'll defend that freedom with everything I have." The coalition grew to include over 500 species, not because membership was required, but because species saw the benefits. Free trade increased prosperity, shared technology accelerated development, mutual defense provided security without surrender. Meanwhile, the remnants of the old council withered. Some species that had stayed loyal to the end tried to maintain the old system. High Arbiter Quinn disappeared entirely, vanishing into energy form somewhere in deep space. Counselor Vreth was captured and faced trial for crimes against sovereign species. The trial was difficult. Vreth had committed terrible acts, suppressing civilizations and manipulating societies, but he had also believed he was helping them. He genuinely thought the Council's way was best.